Thank you so much. Thank you. It's just wonderful to be here. And I want to say that what you have done here, Nick and Ryan, is so moving to me. It's really an honor to be in the presence of this much truth telling. There has been more truth telling at this convention, in my opinion, than there was either at the Republican or the Democratic conventions. And it's kind of like when people talk about having been raised in an alcoholic home, when children feel like neither mommy nor daddy are really saying the truth of what's going on. And there's all this agitation in the air. That's what I feel is going on in this country. It's like we all know things are going on and they're not being discussed. And that should be the purpose of political parties. They should be containers for truth telling as certain people see it. And this convention has done that. It has opened up a conversation that I think is so important. And I'm so honored that you're allowing me to be part of the conversation here today. It's like a kaleidoscope. Everybody has given their own little piece of it, and everybody has said things that to me contribute to a higher level of truth and understanding in our country. I'd like to begin by articulating a context that for me is very helpful in understanding where we are today. Just like when you're a child and you no, I'm sorry, even when you're an adult, but you go to therapy. And in therapy, they ask you about your childhood, because the more you understand where you came from, the more you understand your parents' experience, the more you understand where you came from, the more you can understand where you are now, and the more empowered you can feel about going forward because you know where you've been. So I think that taking a good look at the founding of our country, where we started, where we've come to, gives us tremendous power and understanding of where we need to go now. In 1776, 56 signers of the Declaration of Independence declared in founding documents in a way that had never been done in the world, some foundational principles that were revolutionary. They were not only revolutionary politically, they were revolutionary morally, they were revolutionary spiritually, that all men are created equal, and that all men have the God-given right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That all men should have an opportunity to spread their wings and actualize their own God-given potential. And that's where it started, but that's also where it got gnarly. Because out of the 56 signers of the Declaration, 41 of them were slave owners. That's it right there. That contest and that struggle right there, it is a characterological aspect of the American mind that is bipolar. That on one level stands for the most aspirational and enlightened principles that have ever formed the founding of a country. And at the same time, from the very beginning, it has never not been true. And this struggle is encapsulated in our politics today as much as it has ever been at any time, even at the beginning. Because even though there have been people who were willing to sacrifice their lives to take a stand for those enlightened principles, there have been forces. They were with us then, and they're with us now, that we're willing to transgress, even in the most violent and wicked ways, against the principles on which we purport to stand. And every generation in American history, ours no less than any other, has lived out that struggle. Now, the good news is, over time, we tend to self-correct. Americans responded to slavery with abolition, and Americans responded to the institutional suppression of women with the women's suffragette movement. We responded to segregation with the civil rights movement. So over time, as desperately dark and painful and as filled with human suffering as some of the aspects of American history have been, there have been people in every generation that have taken the wheel, had pushed back against the forces that were transgressing against our principles and did what it took to get this country back on track. It is simply our turn. Now, I was a child, but I was old enough to remember Bobby Kennedy taking a stand against the Vietnam War, taking a stand against the military-industrial complex. Martin Luther King taking a stand against racial injustice. And there was a sense of hope in those years because we saw people within the political realm, Bobby, Martin, and others, who truly represented in political terms the higher aspirational principles of America. They killed them. And everything that we feared would happen with those men's death has come to pass. 1968, they died. In 1980, Ronald Reagan was elected president, and with that came Reaganomics, or trickle-down economics. Now, hear me on this. When you have the wicked transgression against the principles on which we stand encapsulated within an institution, then it is as though that institution is like an operable tumor. You have slavery, we know what we need to do, abolish slavery. You have the suppression of women, we know what we need to do, give women the right to vote. You have segregation and all of the domestic terrorism against Black people that followed for 100 years after the Civil War. We knew what we had to do, pass civil rights legislation and the Voting Rights Act. But what has happened now is something even more insidious, because it's not one institution, it's an economic mindset. It's not an operable cancer. It's more like a cancer that has metastasized and has wrapped itself around healthy organs. With what happened in trickle-down economics, led by the guys from University of Chicago, although interestingly enough, the main articulator of trickle-down economics, a man named Milton Friedman, himself said, but none of this will work without a universal basic income. Well, the people who promulgated trickle-down economics left that part out, of course. And they said that the US corporation should have no moral or ethical responsibility to people or to planet. Because you see, before then, the social consensus was that it should. You see, before then, it's not like America was ever all good, but I remember a time when the social consensus was that at least we should try. With trickle-down economics, the idea was that all the responsibility of the corporation would be the short-term profits for the stockholder class and all other stakeholders, the workers, the earth itself, the community, and the environment, and everything was to accrue to the stockholders. And then they would make so much money that all that money would trickle down and it would lift all boats. After 40 years, we know what happened. It did not lift all boats. As a matter of fact, it left millions of people without even a life vest. It created such a massive transfer of wealth into the hands of 1% as to have completely devastated the middle class in this country. And what it created was a new aristocracy in this country. We have reverted, just like in 1776, we chose democracy over aristocracy, we have reverted to aristocracy. It is now a corporate aristocracy. It is health insurance companies, it is big pharmaceutical companies, it is big oil, it is food companies, it is chemical companies, it is the National Rifle Association, gun manufacturers, and of course, it is the military industrial complex. In 1776, there were enough people who were willing to stand up to aristocracy. And as I said before, it's our turn. Now, if you look at the great social justice movements in our history, such as abolition, such as women's suffrage, third parties were extremely important. Abolition did not emerge from a major party, it emerged from the abolitionist party. Women's suffrage did not emerge from a major political party, it emerged from the Women's Party. Social Security did not emerge from a major party, it emerged from the Socialist Party. But I say that in complete support of Ryan and Nick in saying that they don't want to think of this as a third party. They want it to be a major party. And I agree with everyone here in saying that if the Democrats don't feel that there's a real alternative to their corporatist agenda, then at this point, with everything we've been through, with what happened to Bernie in 2016, what happened to Bernie this year, and to be honest, what happened to me? I've been there. I know it from the inside. The Republican Party has been so taken over by a corporatist agenda, they don't even pretend that they're not. But the Democratic Party is very interesting, isn't it? It sees all the suffering that is created by a corporatist agenda, and it does, in ways that it can, try to ameliorate the suffering on the periphery. But neither the Democratic Party, any more than the Republican Party, will actually challenge the underlying forces that make all that suffering inevitable. And so when it came to abolition, people knew it was simply time for the people to take it from here. When it came to women's suffrage, it was women who knew, no, we're going to have to step in. When it came to civil rights, Martin Luther King, the civil rights movement, it was time for the people to step in. And one more time, it is time for the people to step in. And that's why this party is important. Now, I'm going to vote for Joe Biden. I'm definitely going to vote for Joe Biden. And as has been said here before, everybody has to vote their own conscience, and other people have expressed their opinion about this race. Some people have said to me, oh, Marianne, you think he's going to fix anything? No, actually, I don't think he's going to fix anything. but I think he's going to give us a pause in the action. Because Donald Trump's policies, the state of this country right now, what Donald Trump has done to this country is Donald Trump holding back. You give him a second term, there will be nothing to hold him back. And I agree with Michelle Obama when she said, oh, you think it can't get any worse? Trust me, it can. And just like I said a few minutes ago, I think we should all read up on our American history right now. It would be a good idea to read up about Germany in the 1930s and the 1940s. When I think of this convention, the first word that comes up for me is patriotic. You see, it's a great American tradition to push back against overreach by capitalism. That's what the labor unions are. And of course, as part of the trickle-down hostage taking of this country, there has been an almost decimation of the labor movement in the United States. But that pushback is the most patriotic, most traditionally American thing that we can do. That's why we have labor unions. That's why we have child labor laws. That's why we have antitrust laws. That's why we had Glass-Steagall. You know, everybody talks about how this is a duopoly, but I think in terms of the deeper truth of what the duopoly represents, it's that it's a monopoly. It represents something that theoretically we're not for in this country, where a conversation, where an opportunity is so monopolized by someone that there is no room for other voices. And that's why those of us who are real progressives feel at this country like we're politically homeless. Where are we supposed to go? We've been basically told by the Democratic Party, you're not even welcome here. And even when people have tried so hard to play within the rules, to play within the system, I know, and you know, what happens to candidates within the Democratic Party at this point in the Democratic Party's history who does not color between the lines. So I think this party is so important. Regardless what happens after the election, regardless what happens after the election, whether people feel in their hearts moved to bore from within, to move from within the system of the Democratic Party, or we feel moved to work very, very hard for this party. I think both are options that are meaningful and significant, and everybody, all of us will know in our own hearts after the election, where do we go with that? But I can tell you this part, the bravery that Ryan Knight and Nick Brana are showing. I think these guys are going to be talked about a long time from now. This is something that reminds me of the greatest social movements in the history of this country. You know, everybody knows we have to look at the problems in our history. But I think we need to identify the problems, but we also need to identify with the problem solvers. Some people only talk about what's good in this country and they have no listening to all the terrible things we have to look at. Mass incarceration, slavery, the horrible history of racial injustice. We need an entirely new America. We need to front end our resources in the direction of America's children. We need to not only take a stand against the military-industrial complex, we need to proactively wage peace. We have to, as Dr. Kalmus said, say no more incremental change when it comes to climate change. We have to be bold, and yes, we have to be radical, because love is radical and democracy is radical. We have become a country when Abraham Lincoln said that the men died at Gettysburg so that a government of the people, by the people, and for the people would not perish from the earth. It is perishing now. And we all know it. We become a country and a government of the corporations, by the corporations, and for the corporations. Other generations have said no to that. Other generations have taken a stand. And other generations have course corrected. We've never been perfect. We've never been good all the way, in every way. But it is the job, it is the mission of every generation to do our best, to bolster those things in which America gets it right, to protect those places where America gets it right, and to extend the franchise where it needs to be extended. It's been happening. Some good things have been happening, just like some terrible things keep happening too. And I agree, it's important what Nick said. Just as there is a growing specter of authoritarianism on the planet, there's also a growing growing impulse towards the kind of freedom, towards a kind of democratic fervor and aspiration of genuine freedom for the human spirit so that people can actualize their God-given potential. When you're living in survival all the time, you don't know, you're living in chronic economic tension. You don't know how you're going to pay off your college loans. You don't know what'll happen if you ever get sick. You don't know how you'll ever send your kids to college. Nobody can live freely. Everybody's in such tension and anxiety. There's a reason for that. And as has been said here before, I'll tell you why. Because of policies, because of a rigged system that is built at this point. Because of the undue influence of corporate money on our government has become a system of legalized bribery. It is basically a handmaiden to those corporate forces. And it's not going to stop it until we stop it. And I think at this point, Nick and Ryan and everybody who's spoken here has an absolute legitimate point. We can't look to them to stop it anymore. We have to do it. Other generations have. We need to step in. And I'm proud to be stepping with you. This is big stuff. This is good stuff. This is historic stuff. God bless you. God bless America. And can we please now say, God bless the world. Thanks so much. Wonderful being with you.